I'm Adam Myerson. Welcome back to BTB TV.
All right, BTB TV, we are joined this week, Crosstalk, with Al Donahue. A lot of you guys might not know this name, but Al, you are a head coach with Cycle Smart Coaching. You are one of the founding members of the Jam Fund. I guess just let's start things off with, how did you find your way to cycling as a sport in general?
I came from collegiate cross-country running. I got interested in coaching there. I had actually, even in high school, I had some really great coaches that were, following the cutting edge of coaching. So there was the science behind it was always interesting, and that's what got me into, kind of the human physiology, and that's what I studied in school. I started racing. I think I saw cycling on TV, and that's really what I saw, the tour on TV, and that's actually what got me into. I'm like, oh, this looks cool. It was funny because it was when Indurain was big. Mm-hmm. So it's like he was like 175 pounds. It's around my height. I'm like, oh, maybe I was like, oh, people my size could be cyclists, and there was a guy. So then there was Mass Bay Road Club that was right down the street from me. Wampatuck. They had Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so there's a training crit I could ride to after work. So it's all that stuff just quickly went from loving running and just seeing how much more dynamic cycling was, and there was just like I think one of the things I really loved about cycling was the club structure, mm-hmm. And that's something that I'm very active and a board member of the Northampton Cycling Club, and I think that's one of the huge benefits cycling has over other endurance sports, and something I'd like to see kind of come back to prominence.
Yeah, and so obviously for this, it's cyclocross season. We're talking cyclocross. Just quickly, how did you find your way from that general cycling world into this sort of unique section of the sport?
So South Shore is, especially with Mass Bay, it's like everybody raced cross. It's I think Adam Myerson was in Mass Bay, and so Diane Fortini was mm-hmm. running Mass Bay at the time, and was out of the Cycle Lodge, and just like everybody raced cross. It was a given. Like in the fall, it was an off season. It was when you started to race. Kind of having no impact on my decision, but my brother raced cross. I knew he did this thing where he went into the woods. But it was way before I was skateboarding at the time. I wasn't running, I wasn't riding bikes. It was, because Wampatuck, I think it was like Paul and all those guys, Paul Curley, were putting on races in Wampatuck, years and years before I even conceived of getting on a cross bike. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just right around my house, there's people have always been doing it. It was always part of cycling. It wasn't an option. There wasn't a question of what you're going to do. So Mass Bay definitely got me into that.
Tell me about how you found your way, and then from that next step into coaching. A lot of people, they're an elite racer and they're just looking for a way to make money, and they say, oh, I could coach, or sometimes it's just this guy's doing really well and everyone comes and says, what are you doing? How can you help me? You said you had an interest in it from an early age. What put you over that edge from just being a guy who was curious about it to someone who wanted to take on the role of a coach and pursue it as a career path?
Yeah, I think that there's always been an interest, and human physiology was always something I wanted to study. I went to a smaller school in Maine, so they didn't have there was just you get a BS in bio, so there wasn't a huge applied physiology department or anything. So interest in cycling, and then just trying to, from my own sporting perspective, to see how do you get as good as you can get, and I felt like there weren't a lot of great options for extremely high level coaching for athletes, and so that was something where I had a bunch of friends that were very talented, and we didn't really know who to go to. So we were all scanning any kind of literature we could find, seeing what other pros did, and just from trying to help my friends, trying to help my own results, we just were always doing research, and that's the bio was it's what I like. So it kind of slowly evolved, and I was doing more. And as I raced less, that I didn't get less interested in that research, I think as I race less and less, I get more and more interested in coaching. And it wasn't something I did just to kind of pay the bills. I've always had a genuine interest in it.
Just talking about cross specifically, there's a lot of people out there that don't work with coaches but have their own sort of interest, and probably a lot of people who are watching this are just they're looking for that nugget or that tip that you were searching for at some point in your career. So when we talk about cyclocross and training for cross as a specific discipline, what are a couple of the things there that you find that on a day-to-day basis, the way you train, the way you prepare is unique and different in how you prepare for this sport versus any other area of cycling?
Technical ability is probably the number one limiter for most athletes. It's people think they're good technically and they might be able to get over barriers, but the amount of speed people carry through corners, I think most athletes are on a very rudimentary level. And we'll see, like when you have that one-on-one camp with a client, you can go through some corners, and that's where you can be like, okay, you can pull back 20 seconds a lap, and in a lot of the New England courses, because there's so much, it's cornering. Most regions are pretty similar. Euro courses they're different. Technical riding's different. There's more straight out pedaling, but they're also technically more challenging in a different way. But in U.S. courses, like if you can't corner really, or if you can corner really well, you can take so much time out of your lap.
But is biking? I mean, people talk all the time like physiology. It's a lot of times it's something you're born with. When you look at a guy like Zach McDonald who just shreds his bike, or a guy like Adam Craig who just is those guys who are known for just being able to tear up corners and do all sorts of crazy things on their bike. Is that something that they learned? Is that something that you can teach as a coach, or you can learn as a rider, or is that also something to an extent that you are just either naturally good at that or bad at that to some extent?
I think
Is there a limit to how good you can be technically?
Yeah, I think there are. Yeah, there is. I don't think what I'm looking for and like a level of proficiency is something that people are pretty far below. So what you're competing against in the races. I think majority of people can get to that level where they're taking time out of their laps based on getting better technically. So yes, there's absolutely a level. I think riders like Zach and Adam are exceptional, but they also ride technical, mountain bike, races and training rides a lot. So they're good at it, but they also practice. One of the things with cross is you might get drills from your coach like, hey, do this, work on technique. If you don't know how to do it correctly, practicing doing it incorrectly doesn't make you faster. You can practice bad technique all day long, but there are little things where you're like, oh, you're not quite out of the saddle enough for the corners, or like, not knowing how to float your bike through corners, how to act as the suspension for the bike. That's things like, there's so many people seated in corners and cross. And the difference between like kind of getting your butt a little bit out of the saddle, like your chamois still touching the saddle, but your butt's out of it enough that like you have like that inch of suspension. It's huge. Like getting the person to look in the right place, just like body position and general proprioception is like there is a huge amount of improvement that almost everybody can take advantage of. I think it's fun to see. We have a number of BMX guys. And those riders are very good technically, and
And that's a sport where like the Keogh family, they come from BMX, and it's a sport where they really emphasize obviously technique, and it's something that's really practiced. Whereas in cycling, and especially when it comes to cross, it's like, oh, he's good because he's a mountain biker and he rides his mountain bike or whatever. But it's rare that you look at a guy who's good on a cross bike and say, oh, it's because he works really hard at that. So you're given these ideas. If you were to go for a ride and you wanted to be better at cornering, what's a drill or what's something that you can? I know you get paid for that stuff, but give something away for free. What's a way that you can actually do that in your ride a specific thing?
So doing it correctly, that's the key right there. So you have to have someone who knows how to do it correctly watch you do it.
So you can't read it or talk about it and do it. You have to do it with. You can sign up for a clinic.
I think one of the things you could do is video yourself. So if you video yourself through corners, a lot of times people have a perception of what they're doing. and like you can, you see this projection of where you're looking, but what you think your body is doing or where you think your contact points are or how your weight's distributed, if you see a video of yourself, you're like, okay, that doesn't look like what Kevin Powell's looks like, or Sven going through a corner. Like, if you like, everybody looks the same. Everybody that's good looks the same going through corners. It's not like, oh my God, that guy is doing corners totally differently.
Right. Unless you're Adam Craig throwing a nose wheelie or Zach McDonald.
Right.
But those are the exceptions.
Right. And I wouldn't. Yeah, like no one's gonna say, oh, that's probably the best way around those corners. But so there is some variation to that, but videoing yourself, videoing your technique, and then comparing it to the professionals is, I think that's the best thing you could do. Like, okay, do I look differently? The next thing, so that's super easy. iPhones have great, like super high resolution cameras.
Yeah, just go out with your buddy and.
Absolutely. And then if you have someone, riding with someone better than you, in riding, we don't ride necessarily like super gnarly like single track mountain bike courses, but go out and ride courses and trails that are harder than your cross races. So if the hardest thing you ever see on your cross bike is the race course, you don't want that to be the limit of your ability. You want to see a drop on a race course and be like, oh my God, that's nothing compared to the stuff we do at home. So brake it. Like, you don't even touch your brakes down it. You're not like, fear is what gets you to tense up, and that's what kind of inhibits the performance of your bike. If you can do anything on that cross course and not even think about it, you're going to be able to focus on taking a good line, staying relaxed, and really getting the most out of your bike's performance.
So, yeah, I mean that's especially important come this time of year when people are going to be watching this, when conditions get a little muddier or a little snowy and icy, like we just saw in Bend, or we might see in nationals. Moving from a bike, from a handling standpoint, into the actual physiological side of it and training. I mean, so many people now have power meters, and they when I, as a fake coach myself, a lot of the things that I hear from people is they talk about threshold. If you look at a power meter, or you just think about the effort compared to an hour time trial at threshold versus an hour cyclocross race at threshold versus an hour crit or something like that, they're totally different sports, totally different requirements. So training for cyclocross, how do you train for that hour of threshold, or that hour as hard as you can go, to meet the specific demands of the courses and the style? Yeah,
so cross is it doesn't even have similar. If you look at a power foul from a cross race, it's it's really hard to analyze, because how much running was there? Like there's off the bike stuff. There's a lot of things like, did you change bikes? So it's really hard to get data, but we do know it's very variable. So the ability to ride at bursts well over threshold that are extremely anaerobic, and clear that metabolic waste, and repeat that over and over and over. That's the name of the game for dry most U.S. cross racing.
Yeah, I mean, look, so just talking about the style of a guy, you look at it in the road side of things, it's like, well, he's clearly a sprinter, he's clearly a climber, he's clearly a time trialist. When you look at cross and you look at the mix within the results, you have a guy like Adam Meyerson, who's a crit guy and a sprinter, and then you'll have this super skinny guy who's winning Mount Washington, and then you'll have the time trials, and they can all sort of interchange within cross. So is that to say that cross, because there are so many different elements of it, there's something for everybody, or is there a specific cross type of rider that makes a good cross rider?
Well, I remember a couple of years ago, it was like Horner would be riding with right around guys like me. So it's like
I outsprinted Freddie Rodriguez on the
right,
cross
so
race.
it's like clearly endurance for days. That's not really an issue. Like he can power to weight is amazing. So it's there are the top level NRC crit guys are really, that's the kind of the engine you want for a cross. But I think you could be good at something during your primary season, and depending on how seriously you want to train for cross, or whether it's your focus, you can kind of detune that engine slightly, and have which would be fun for if you're doing one kind of training all year, to detune a bit, and just it would be a lot of resting for those guys, and work on just being a little bit punchier. If your goal is like okay, I really want to be like a stage racer, climber, time trialist, cross doesn't fit in for a lot of reasons, because you need to be doing your base. You need to take, you need to take time off. You need to, like, I remember, it's been that way for a while, but people have always talked about you can't like be a really serious pro road racer and do cross or mountain bike. There has to be, you got to, you'll see riders that are extremely high caliber during the summer. They have okay results, and so it's clearly not their physiological potential, but it's their, the training they can do for it, the, where they are in their training year, and kind of mentally how much they can invest in it. So, as cross gets bigger, if you kind of get specific training for it and you're a specialist, that's what's going to take. Even like in as you bump down categories, there are people that are more cross specialists now, where they're not going to have as big of a road season. They take the kind of the late summer a little bit easier, stop racing quite as much, get amped up, and do their training for cross.
So when we talk about specific ways that you can improve your technical elements, taking that into consideration now in terms of the specific needs for a cross race and the type of rider that might do well. Come cross season, you're in the middle of it. What's a go-to cyclocross workout that your guys do on a regular basis?
Well, we have the luxury of having a number of cross courses, right around here, and that's,
which I guess that maybe I should start the question then with, even because a lot of people want to know, is your go-to cross workout, is it on the cross bike even as opposed to the road bike?
Yeah.
Is it on the cross bike on the road? Is it off-road?
We put away road bikes, at the end of August. We like all workouts, all rides, everything, and that's, you can do it. It still works. I'm sure there are great cross racers who do things differently, but from my experience personally and from my coaching experience, there was just I got it more from my personal experience, and I kind of talked to other racers and people I've worked with, that you'd go do your workouts with your power meter on the road on your road bike, and then you get on the cross bike and like the pedals are just enough everything's just like the recruitment's just enough different that like you don't feel like you have that power. You don't feel solid like you did on the road bike. So I found that training people and and when I was training myself, I would find that if I did the intervals on my cross bike, I would feel much stronger on the cross bike, come race day.
So what's that workout? You're on the cross bike. It's not it's a regular season workout, not like your go-to get ready for the season workout or your peaking specific workout, but just something that people should be doing, 10 times a season or something.
So we're talking mid-season?
Yeah, mid-season.
So
a go-to, when you're in that, and that's really where most people are. I mean, when you're coaching, you're thinking about I'm peaking or preparing for this race, or this one doesn't matter as much. But for the average person out there, they want to do well in every race they do, and so they sort of hit that level of fitness, and they're just sort of trying to, they're always trying to get better, but they're really just looking to stay as fit as they can with the time they have. What is it? So do you go out? Is it working on that hour threshold? Are you doing 30-second hills? Is it what have you found that's the most beneficial?
It depends, right?
Yeah.
So the go-to structure for in-season is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday are pretty easy days.
Assuming you're racing Saturday, Sunday.
If you're racing Saturday, Sunday, even if you're racing racing one day.
Yeah.
So Wednesday is really the day we focus on for workouts, and making sure that you're doing enough to stimulate, get enough training stress that you're not getting out of shape and you're not kind of just taking a week off, but not doing anything so hard that you're going to be taking away from the weekend. The weekend is a lot of, there's a lot of training you do on the weekend. You're on the bike probably most hours per day out of the week, Saturday and Sunday. You're doing the most intensity. So like you have these two huge days on Saturday and Sunday. Mm-hmm. I think what I see with new clients is they downplay how much of a training event the weekend is, or how stressful the weekend is.
Yep.
So getting recovered Monday, Tuesday is super important, and then Wednesday, seeing if your body's ready to do anything. And there's depending how much volume the athlete's done in general or where they are. There's plenty of weeks you just don't do a whole lot on Wednesday. And I think where I see most people go wrong is they're doing too much additional intensity. So like if you're just sticking around like tempo or like the low end of threshold, doing 10, like, you know, 10 to 15 minute intervals, in that, you know, and that's where, so that's the general, like, what you're looking for is like, okay, I want to just do a little bit of work, get your heart rate up, kind of keep things rolling. So then you have the two options. You're going to do, you know, let's say 2 by 15 minutes, but it can range from 10 to 20 minutes. So 2 by 10 to 20 minutes of tempo to, you know, to low end threshold. I don't need to do anything harder than that if we're just in a maintenance phase. Yeah. And so then your options are, do I want to do it on a flat road? Do I want to do it motor pacing? Do I want to do it on a cross course?
Yeah, because like we say, I mean, there's an hour time trial versus an hour cyclocross, and the very different demands there. So what? Yeah, to say to someone go do 15 minutes at tempo on a cross course with corners is very different than tempo behind a scooter.
Right. So it depends on if someone is very proficient technically. Getting them on if someone's been racing for years, they're very proficient technically, probably don't need to get them on the cross course.
Sure.
If someone is very, very new to the sport and technique, like we mentioned before, is a huge limiter, getting on the cross course is really important. It depends, you know, like if you're in the early part of the season, even the experienced rider, I might want to get on the course just to keep, you know, make sure they're sharpened up. And you know, I get people on the bikes in August really working on, you know, higher speed, like really pushing corners on the cross bike. So you're, you know, if you can be ahead of you know, we're still at the point where you can be ahead of the game as far as your cross preparation, because people are, you know, start later than I think they should. When cross gets bigger and bigger, you might not be able to be the early bird. So earlier, you know, if earlier in the maintenance phase, or if technical riding is a big limiter, then I'd have them do that workout on a cross course. If it's this time of year, you don't need to get on a cross course. Like if you're not going to get,
if you've already done 15 races.
Yeah. And so a steady state, so like you're inundated with highly variable work, highly specific work. So a nice steady state road effort, that can be a great change of pace, or kind of, you know, something that's new, like that you haven't done in a while. So then that could be, you know, even though we're still in this kind of maintenance phase, later in the season, getting on the road is just, your bike doesn't get dirty, and like your body doesn't get quite beat up, and that nice steady effort is still, you know, it's a great change of pace, and something that will add to your conditioning.
So I mean, so if I'm taking something away from this, if I were watching, and I think you're right, so many people think about training for the races, training to be fast for the races, that they're out there doing 10 by 30 second things on Tuesday, and they're doing big efforts on Thursday, as well as their race simulation or something on Wednesday, in addition to racing 2 days. And it sounds like what you're saying is that the best training you do for cross during cross season is racing cross.
Cross is so intense, and I think that's what, you know, newer riders or people that, you know, if you want to get better results, you're literally not going hard enough. And it's like, you know, I think racing double weekends is like, it's very ambitious, and to actually produce a good result, there's a lot of, you know, you have to really get mentally ready for that, and to be able to be physically and mentally ready for like your best cross race is very challenging. And so if you're looking to get better, you want to look at the quality of your events. And are you going to a race, and are you on the line? You're like are you like amped to like just shred every second of that race? And like, or like you're driving, you're like, oh, it's kind of cold. I'm on the start line. Like I'm kind of sleepy. Like you know, you can see people in the race. Like, are you sprinting every single corner? Like every time you slow down, like, are you sprinting back up to speed? Are you burying every second of your race? And if you're not doing that, you want to look at like, you know, why aren't you doing that? Are you mentally? Did you come to the race mentally and physically a little tired? And that's what I don't like. So I agree that racing is the best training for cross if you're doing good races. If you're coming and doing, you know, to the event tired and kind of doing, you know, it's hard to tell someone they're not doing, like that's not a very good race. Like, yeah, it still hurts. Doing like a race where you're kind of focused, or like there are blocks of time in the race where you're kind of spacing out a little bit. it still hurts. You're tired after it. It feels like you went as hard as you could, but there are, you can kind of see it from the outside. And as an athlete, you have to be honest with yourself. Be like, yeah, there were times where like you started coasting a little bit early, and like you didn't quite, like turn yourself inside out to the next corner.
We could talk for hours. If you guys have learned anything, it's that there's this great bottomless pit of knowledge out here. If you can find yourself an experienced and a knowledgeable coach to talk to, we'll have, I'm sure, some links down below about more information on Al. But Al, thank you for joining us. Thanks for talking cross, and hopefully someone out there just got a little bit faster.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.